Thanks for tuning in to the Wingspace podcast. This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911. In today's episode, you may notice a slight fluctuation in the audio quality. We appreciate your patience and understanding while we learn how to create the best possible recordings for our listeners.
Hey there, and welcome to the Wingspace podcast, a place to take up space. I am so excited that you have pressed play on this episode, and today we're going to be talking about something pretty close to my heart, and that is the opening and the founding and the very first day of what was known as Hope and Healing Psychotherapy and is now known 5 years later as Hope and Healing Therapy and Wellness Center. My message to you today is start, keep going, and don't stop. And in order for me to share that message with you, I have to tell you a little bit about our background story, how we came to be, and how we got to where we are today. So September 1st of 2018 was our official launch day. A couple of months before we opened our doors, I opened the doors of Hope and Healing. I had been hearing throughout the staff that I was working with that there was a shortage of therapists, and so I was hearing a need within our community. I have worked for many, many years with survivors of trauma, and I'm passionate about working with survivors of trauma and helping to instill the message not only in the survivor but also in the community that we're not broken and we don't need to be fixed, and we can heal from the bad stuff that happens to us and the stuff that gets stuck in our bodies. So, it was kind of this background noise that was happening, and I was hearing it, but I was still trying to do the really hard work that I was doing in my previous position. And through conversations with a colleague, I had this opportunity to rent a space and to open the practice. And so that's where I started, right? I had this idea that I was going to start a practice, and I remember having a informal conversation with my husband. We were in our basement of our house, and he was on the stationary bike, and I just kind of plopped down on the couch, and I was like, so what do you think about me opening a private practice? And we chatted about it, and he basically said, I don't know anything about it, but it sounds like a great idea. If you want to do it, let's do it. And so we started, and it didn't take long for me to get all of the pieces in line for me to be able to open the practice. I'll be really honest with you. It happened within like 36 hours. I had all of the business pieces and just kind of the big steps. I had the space, I had the electronic medical record, I had all of those things. So for you, if you're thinking about, hey, I want to start something, just know that it could be smooth sailing to get it started, or there could be some really big obstacles along the way. So we're going to come back to this idea of starting. So a couple of weeks go by. I get everything set up, I order the furniture, I put together desks and all that kind of stuff, and spent about 2.5 weeks just kind of putting the pieces together, the pictures on the wall, the pillows on the couch, all of the kind of things. I sent out marketing letters, I started a website, I did all the things to get clients. And so September 1 was the big day, and here we are celebrating 5 years. I was sitting in this new to me office with all this brand new office furniture and office supplies and the logo and the business cards and all the stuff, and the phone didn't ring. And I came home that first day, and my family said, how'd it go? And I was like, well, I sent some emails, I did some marketing stuff, the phone didn't ring. Now, I could have been really discouraged, and I could have said, this is a bad idea. And at that point, my previous job was probably still open, and I probably could have gone back to it. But I said, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to push through this. So again, the message today is start and keep going. And so we're going to jump back to that idea. For you, what does that mean to keep going? And then for me, once the phone started ringing, it didn't stop, which means I didn't stop. So here we are, 5 years later. We've morphed into this amazing practice. We've turned into Hope and Healing Therapy and Wellness Center. We have partnerships with other providers that do amazing things outside of mental health therapy, but that also treats mental, physical, spiritual wellness of our community. And it's all because I had encouragement around me and I didn't stop. So let's dig into this a little bit. This idea of start, keep going, and don't stop. So you might be saying, start what? It could be something as simple as start organizing that closet in your house. It could be something bigger, like start that application to higher education. It could be something like start that business that you've been dreaming of. Start getting your house ready to sell it, to move to that place you want to move to. So whatever it is, think about that thing. Of course, you want to make sure that it's in line with your values, that it's in line with your intentions of your life, that it's in line with your family and your friends and your support system. You might step out of the box a little, but realistically, you want to make sure that the thing that you're going to start, what is the purpose of it? Why are you doing it? Kind of really dive into that. And that's where your support system can come into play. I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to colleagues. I spoke to people that were already in private practice. I spoke to other social workers that maybe had explored private practice but didn't do it for whatever reason. I spoke to my family. I spoke to my husband, spoke to friends, friends who own businesses but maybe outside of the mental health world. I really dove into what's this going to be like to own a business. But I also kind of tapped into this idea of what do they think I'm capable of. If I would have had one of those family members or friends or colleagues say, Jen, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think you can be a business owner, or I think it's bigger than what you're capable of, I might have paused. Now, that could have just been the enemy trying to keep me down from doing good work, or it could have been the reality that maybe I wasn't meant to be this business owner. So regardless, right, I had to start somewhere. And so I was asking those questions of people around me. And that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to ask people what their thoughts are. Maybe what support that they can offer you. Maybe what encouragement that they can offer you. Are there any services, or do they know anybody? Do they have any connections? If you live in a small town area, then somebody knows somebody, and you might be able to help get off your feet with whatever it is, organizing that closet or starting that business, as small or as big as it may be. And for you, it's perspective, right? So that cleaning out that closet or that garage or something could be a gigantic task for you. I don't want to minimize that, because starting a business it might be an easy thing for somebody, whereas cleaning out a home or a house or a closet or something like that might, it's just perspective. So what's the thing I'm going to do? And do I have people around me that can help support me and provide resources? I had a colleague that had an office space available. I had a friend who was a graphic designer who was able to do my website, my logo, my website, my business cards, all those things. I knew people in places, so I could send letters and, hey, send me clients if, I'm open and accepting. So tapping into those resources that I had available to me was the first place. And that's what you can do when you want to start that thing. You just have to take the first step. And just like I tell my clients, that picking up the phone and calling to make that appointment is the first step, and it is the hardest step. For you, whatever this thing is that you might want to start, it's going to be the hardest. That first step is absolutely going to be the hardest. And then once you've started, you have to fight against all the barriers that come up. Like I said, that first day, the phone didn't ring. And I'm sure I could look back on referral lists and call lists and all that stuff and figure out how long it took me to get those first calls, and how long it was that I had to wait until I felt like I had that momentum. But really the message is to just keep going. If you come up against a roadblock, how do I get around it? Do I go over it? Do I go under it? Do I go around it? Do I push it out of my way? Do I go through it? What is this obstacle, and how am I going to work through it? Because if we stop, then we have just put that bigger barrier, and we cannot reach that goal that we ultimately wanted to reach when we started. So again, we look at what are our resources available that help us to just keep going. I tapped into colleagues that had started their own practices and said, okay, phone's not ringing, what do I do? Maybe send out a few more emails, maybe tap into some other referral sources. So for you, let's say you're, I don't know, trying to start a business yourself, or let's say you're trying to apply for school, gearing up on back to school season. So maybe you're applying for school and you need a transcript and you're not sure how to get that transcript from your undergraduate school. Okay, that's a roadblock. Who can I tap into that might be able to help? Do I have a friend that applied for graduate school or a technical school that might be able to help me figure out how do I get my transcript? I remember speaking to somebody one time that their school had closed, and so they couldn't actually get an official transcript because their school had closed. That's a barrier, but it's a barrier that you can push through and that you can overcome. You certainly don't have to say, well, I can't get that transcript, so I can't go to school. We're going to push through it. We're going to tap into those resources, the resources that said, yeah, start. And these are the things about you that I think are going to be helpful in starting and doing this task. Those are going to be the same people that are going to say your strength and your characteristics that got you started are the things that are going to keep going. So start, take that first step, and don't stop walking. Don't stop walking. You might slow down, you might speed up, you might have to go around a pothole or two. Just keep going. Just this week, I had, actually it was last week, I had a situation come up where I am trying to go for a daily walk, about 30 to 45 minutes. Just, I sit all day long with them, seeing clients and doing admin work and in meetings and things like that. So I really want to kind of be less sedentary. And because I have a broken arm, I can't really work out right now. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm staying active. And so I had come home from work, and there had been some storms during the day, in the afternoon, and there was a potential for some more storms. And I typically don't like to walk or exercise like right after we eat, but I was kind of looking at the clouds and thinking it's now or never. So, I told my husband and my kids, just leave the kitchen, leave the dishes, whatever. I'm going to change clothes and go for a walk. So I head out, and I am, I don't know, not even off my driveway, maybe a little bit off my driveway, and I can feel the raindrops. So I started, I said, you can do this. No big deal. Get it in before it rains. Maybe only do 30 minutes instead of 45. Go walk 15, come back 15, but just go. What's the worst that can happen? It can rain on you, right? If it gets too bad, you got your phone, you call your husband, he can come pick you up. No big deal. So I started, and I'm walking, and I can see the raindrops, or I can feel the raindrops, and I can see them ahead. They're coming down. I'm like kind of walking through the trees, so they're not too heavy, but ahead of me I can see the trees have parted, and it's coming down pretty good. On the left side of the sky, it was a little questionable, and on the right side it was blue, and it was big white puffy clouds. And I was like, I'm just going to keep going. And it started picking up the rain a little bit. And I was kind of laughing to myself because I'm thinking I'm going to end up soaking wet. Cast and all, I'm going to end up soaking wet. And I just kept walking. And I got maybe a quarter to a half a mile away. And it stopped. And I remember thinking later that night, oh, by the way, I actually did almost an hour of a walk instead of just doing 30 minutes because the clouds completely parted and the skies were blue and it was beautiful. I remember thinking that later that night, if I had turned around in my driveway when it started raining, I wouldn't have gotten this walk in. But I just kept going. I said, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to keep going. And then the next thing is that I didn't stop. When the rain picked up and it started getting a little worse, I didn't stop. I just kept going. So going back to the Hope and Healing story, I started September 1st, kickoff day, super excited, in my office, phone's not ringing, I'm just gonna keep going. And then I didn't stop. Because what I found out was that I was gifted, and I was blessed and truly honored to be able to provide a service to our local community that was in need. Because what happened was, from September to December, the phone started ringing, and it kept ringing, and it didn't stop. And that told me two things. Number one, it told me that the barriers around mental health treatment were coming down because people were really willing to call. It also told me that our community was in need. It actually told me a third thing too, and that was that I couldn't do this by myself. And so as part of this keep going process, it's when I started bringing on staff, because I couldn't see all the people. I couldn't do all the sessions. I needed more staff. And so what ended up happening was that I started as a solo practice. I kept going, and I didn't stop until I had to morph, and I started into a group practice, and we kept going. And we're not stopping. And we're not stopping because our community has embraced us, and I believe it is a true honor to be able to provide the service to the community that we provide. But if I would have sat on my couch in the basement of my house mid-August of 2018 and thought, there's just too many steps, there's way too much I have to do, and I hadn't started, we wouldn't be where we are now. And if I would have sat on that day, September 1st of 2018, and was frustrated the fact that the phone didn't ring, we wouldn't be where we are today. And if I had stopped at any point, there's been barriers. There have been obstacles. It is not easy owning a business. It is not easy being in private practice. I mean, there's barriers. There are barriers, there's obstacles, there's the good, the bad, the ugly, right? So if at any time I would have said, forget it, I started, I kept going, but now I'm going to stop, we wouldn't be where we are today. So going back to that idea of me going for a walk the other day in the rain, I set a daily goal of walking 30 to 45 minutes a day. If I didn't start when it was going to start raining soon, and if I didn't keep going once it started raining, and if I would have stopped when it started raining more, I wouldn't have met that goal. Now, here's the deal. If you set a daily goal and you don't do it once, it's really not the end of the world. Things happen. But I knew that I wanted to push through this potential little rainstorm. Earlier in the day, it had been quite a bad thunderstorm, but I knew that I wanted to get it in. I wanted to get my daily sunshine. I wanted to get some fresh air. I wanted to get out of the house. I wanted to not be within the four walls of a building because I had been in the office all day. So I knew that I had to start and keep going and not stop so that I could meet that goal. So I invite you today to think about, what is something, it doesn't matter how small or how big or where it lies in between in terms of the size or the gravity of it, what is one thing that you want to start? What is one thing that you want to do? It might be a huge project in your mind, but maybe you have resources that can help you. If you start the process, if you start taking that walk, then you're going to figure out who the people are around you that are going to be able to help you. And when you start talking to people about what you want to do, you're going to find that there's people that say, oh, I know a graphic designer. Oh, I know an office organizer. Oh, I know this person. And before you know it, you're going to have a team of people that are willing and wanting to help you. So I invite you to think about that thing that you want to do. Big or small, in between, it doesn't matter. Start that process. Take the necessary steps. And every time you come up against an obstacle, keep going. Keep going. Just like they said in the Friends episode, pivot. Maybe we have to pivot. Maybe you have to take a turn. Maybe you have to go down a path you weren't expecting. Maybe you have to climb over this mound of stuff that got in your way. Maybe you have to pause and you have to rest and you have to reevaluate and you have to think. But you're gonna keep going. And no matter how big the obstacle comes in front of you or how big the problems are that you face, you're gonna keep going. And you're going to get to a place where you're not gonna stop. Now, it might sound silly to say start, keep going, and don't stop when maybe it's a task, right? I need to clean out this closet. I'm gonna start, I'm gonna keep going, I'm not gonna stop, but I'm gonna finish the task. So then what do? Maybe it's the next thing on your list. We sometimes have a really hard time being motivated to get things done, and our to-do list just seems like it's so big and there's so much to do, and then we don't do any of it because there's so much to do. So start with one thing. Break it down. Maybe the start place is this big, huge list of projects. I need to make it smaller. I need to break it down into tasks so that I can ultimately start with one thing and I can keep going and not stop until that thing is done, and then I can move on to the next thing. So consider that. And I'd be curious to know, what's one thing that you've been wanting to do that you could start today? Maybe you have to write it down on some paper and say, these are some potential obstacles that I'm gonna face, and I'm gonna keep going through these, and I'm gonna push through these, and what are my resources and support that I have available to me in order to keep going when things get tough, so that I don't stop. So consider that today. Start, keep going, and don't stop. Because as we celebrate our 5th year here at Hope and Healing Therapy and Wellness Center, I just have to remember that if I wouldn't have started, if I hadn't kept going, and if I stopped at any point, we wouldn't be celebrating 5 years, and we wouldn't have the exciting services and opportunities to serve our community that we have. And I would love to see our community have other success stories of other people who are starting things and they keep going and they don't stop no matter what. Feel free to send me an email, jennifer@hopehealingtherapy.com. I'd love to know what your project is. I'd love to know how you overcame those obstacles, and I would love to be able to celebrate your successes and your wins in these small, medium, large, extra large projects, whatever they happen to be. So just start, keep going, and don't stop. Have a great day.